You're listening to Ghostumentary Scary Short Stories, original pieces updated throughout the week.
Dying Grandma Alice. Cary had always admired her grandmother, Alice, for the strength she'd shown when Cary's own mother oddly passed away. Alice stepped up, even though she was already dealing with her own health issues, and raised Cary through her difficult teenage years. They shared a close bond, one filled with bittersweet memories of baking together, late-night talks, and Alice always being there when Cary needed someone the most. Now, at 35, Cary was a single mother herself, raising her daughter Simon. Alice had a special place in her heart for Simon, often calling her the light of her life. When Alice's health took a turn for the worse and she entered hospice, Cary didn't hesitate to leave work and spend the last few days with her. She arranged for Simon to stay with a close friend, knowing Alice would want her nearby if she were able to see her. Simon and Alice had always been inseparable, and the guilt weighed heavy on Cary for not visiting as often as she should have in the last few years. Cary had spent several days by Alice's bedside, reading books and occasionally answering work emails, feeling torn between her responsibilities as a mother and a professional. Yet she knew this was her time to give back to Alice, just as Alice had given to her. The doctors said it wouldn't be long, but Alice had been unconscious for days, showing no signs of waking. That evening, Cary sat in the dimly lit room, staring at Alice's frail form, her breathing shallow and ragged. She thought about Simon, how her daughter would miss Alice, and how Alice had missed so many precious moments with her great-granddaughter in these last few months. The thought of Simon, safe with Cary's friend, brought a small sense of peace, but the sadness still gnawed at her. She hadn't been there as much for Alice recently. Work, dating, life had gotten in the way. As the clock neared visiting hour's end, Cary knew it was time to leave for the night. She stood up, leaned over Alice, and gently kissed her forehead. Her skin was cold, but Alice had always been cold, Cary thought, trying to push away the discomfort. She moved back slightly to adjust Alice's hair, then froze. Alice's eyes were open, staring directly at her. Cary's breath caught in her throat. She had waited for days, hoping for one last moment of lucidity. But what greeted her wasn't the warm gaze she remembered. Alice's eyes were dark, almost black, and filled with an intensity that unsettled Cary. They bore into her, cold and furious. "Grandma?" Cary whispered, her voice trembling. "It's me, Cary." No response. Alice's face remained rigid, her eyes fixed on Cary, unblinking. I'll go get someone," Cary stammered, backing toward the door. As she moved, Alice's eyes followed her, tracking her every step with a gaze that felt more predatory than familiar. Cary rushed out to the nurse's station, her heart pounding. "My grandmother! She's awake!" she blurted. The nurse followed Cary back into the room, but when they arrived, Alice was once again unconscious, just as she had been before. The nurse gave Cary a knowing look, as though she had simply been seeing things, and left her alone with Alice once more. Cary, shaken, grabbed her purse and left for the night. But the image of Alice's dark, accusing eyes stayed with her. Was it a hallucination, a trick of the light? Cary convinced herself it had to be. Still, a knot of dread coiled in her stomach as she drove home. The next morning, Cary returned to the hospice, only to be greeted by an administrator with sombre news. Alice had passed during the night, just an hour after Cary left. Cary's heart sank. She had been so close to being there, yet her grandmother had died alone. Tears filled her eyes as the administrator gently offered her the chance to say a final goodbye. Cary nodded and followed them to the back room where Alice's body lay, covered by a thin sheet. The air in the room was thick, oppressive. The administrator left her alone, and Cary approached the gurney, her footsteps echoing in the silence. As she pulled back the blanket, Alice's face was just as it had been the night before, peaceful in death. But the memory of those cold, angry eyes haunted Cary. Cary stood there, overwhelmed with guilt and sorrow. She bent down and kissed Alice's forehead again, this time for the last time. As she pulled away, she whispered, "I'm so sorry, Grandma. I love you." Then she felt it. A hand, cold and stiff, wrapped around her wrist. Cary froze, her heart slamming in her chest. She looked down in horror to see Alice's hand gripping her tightly, the flesh cold and hard like stone. Slowly, she looked up at Alice's face. Her eyes were open again, but this time there was no mistaking it. They were wide, black, and filled with an unfathomable rage. "Grandma?" Cary whimpered, her voice barely a whisper. Alice's grip tightened, painfully. Cary tried to pull away, but Alice was unnaturally strong, her fingers digging into Cary's wrist like iron claws. Her mouth began to open, wider than any human mouth should. Cary stared in horror as the impossible happened, Alice's jaw unhinged, stretching unnaturally, revealing rows of decaying teeth, black gums, and a cavernous darkness that seemed to consume the room. Cary screamed, but no sound came out. She tried to yank her arm free, but Alice's other hand shot up, grabbing her other wrist. The pressure on her arms was unbearable. It felt like her bones would snap at any moment. Then came the noise. A hollow, low groaning that seemed to rise from deep within Alice's chest. It grew louder and louder until it became a deafening, bone-rattling wail that filled Cary's ears, vibrating her skull. She tried to scream again, but the sound drowned everything out. The world around her began to spin, her vision blurring as the dark void of Alice's open mouth seemed to draw her in, pulling at her very soul. Cary felt herself being pulled closer, her head nearly inside the monstrous maw that had once been her grandmother. The noise was unbearable, the darkness consuming her senses. She could feel her mind slipping away, like something was being ripped from her body. And then it was over. Cary's body crumpled to the floor, lifeless. Alice stood up, her form no longer frail and weak, but strong and healthy. Her eyes glinted with cruel satisfaction as she looked down at Cary's empty shell. A twisted smile curled on her lips as she whispered, "Looks like you won't be needing your daughter anymore. I'll take care of her for now." With one final glance at Cary's body, Alice turned and walked out of the room, the smile never leaving her face.
Looking for more scary tales? Subscribe to our podcast and visit ghostumentary.com. Let us know what you think or share with us your scary tales. We might just make a new story from it.